Swellen's Reckoning, Book 1 in the Renegade General series by W. Hock Hochheim. Mordecai Swoop Swellen was first introduced as an exciting, mysterious character in my book, The China Alamo, a Johann Gunther Western adventure series where Gunther is sent on a rescue mission to China to free 3 American doctors shanghaied there during the Boxer Rebellion. A popular character in this book was the fugitive renegade Lieutenant General Swoop Swellen. Swoop was so popular, I knew he deserved his own series. Thus, the Renegade General book series with England's Piccadilly Publishing. Lieutenant General Mordecai Swoop Swellen was born a fighting man, and he was once known for his violent raids and attacks on any and all enemies. Some were criminals, and some were warring American Indians. When so ordered, he would swoop in and decimate any declared enemy. He was also known for his tactical brilliance and sudden, vicious, branding iron, red-hot anger. Now, how did this prestigious officer such as Swoop become a wanted man back in 1890 with a $1,000 dead or alive bounty on his head, chased by bloodthirsty bounty hunters and U.S. Army all over the world? In Swellen's Reckoning, we learn his origin story and how, as a fugitive, he became involved with a new invention, a mountain-climbing cog and rail train system, and its company from Sicily working in Pikes Peak, Colorado. He's hired by the Sicilian owner-inventor Arturo Zappello to thwart sabotage, theft, and murder within his own company, and further foil one of his sinister crew chiefs, Carlo Greco, also a renowned swordsman obsessed with challenging the locals to sword duels to their death. Many reckonings befall Swoop and all those around him in this, his first adventure, as the trap closes in and in. Here are the first 3 chapters of Swellen's Reckoning for free. This adventure starts a few years after the Boxer Rebellion, a gunfight on the streets of Peking, and a recollection of the terrible, twisted events of 1890. Chapter 1. Broken China. Master Lei's Kung Fu School, Peking, China, 1903.
Men will kill the doctor,
the boy whispered in Chinese into his ear. The neighborhood child had charged into Master Lei's Kung Fu class in a too noisy clutter of interruption, annoying the strict Sifu Lei's school rules. Mordecai Swoop Swellen left the wooden class floor and ushered the neighborhood boy near the front door lobby. He took a knee and asked him in Mandarin to repeat this shocking message.
"You must go to the doctor's office,"
the boy said.
"They told me to tell you to come to the doctor's office or they will kill him and his wife."
"Who said this?" Swoop asked.
"The men, Americans like you, they have guns."
Swoop felt a wave of anguish overcome him. His worst nightmare has suddenly come true. He'd been found, discovered, and as far away as China. How could this be? And his one remaining mission in Peking after the Boxer Rebellion, his one assignment was to protect the American Dr. Belmont, and he had failed. Now the doctor's life and his new family were in danger just because of his secret past.
"They said they are waiting for you at the doctor's office."
"Okay, kid, go home," he said. The Kung Fu class continued on behind him. Swoop stood and nodded and bowed at Master Lei across the room, who frequently cut his eyes at him. Swoop had a sinking burn that he would never see Master Lei again. He grabbed his leather bag and shoes. He circled the hewn floor and with a bow slipped out the back door, just in case the child messenger was followed. He scanned the rear alleyways and yards, then jogged across the Kwun's small backyard, through an alley, and out into a narrow dirt back street. Dressed in Chinese clothes, the Scottish-Irish Swoop always walked the streets of Peking like a native, despite being 6 foot tall and having somewhat curly brown-reddish hair. This anonymity came because the numerous streets and avenues bustled with legation embassy members from numerous European countries, the U.S. and Canada. Post-Boxer Rebellion, all the local Chinese were acclimated to a melting pot of international pedestrians and lifestyles. This section of Peking looked like Western towns, or in some areas, bigger Western cities in the U.S., except for the distinct Oriental architecture found here and there, or the occasional camel train hauling goods to markets. Mordecai Swoop Swellen had been there almost 3 years. Not only was he tasked by a Army Major Johann Gunther in 1901 to protect the young Dr. Belmont, but he was considered a respected hero inside the legation communities. Swoop was a champion of the Boxer Rebellion, a wild warrior protecting the embassies in their darkest of times, known those days by Western historians and newsmen as the 55 Days of Peking Siege. The new American ambassador, Devin Larms, even hired him on for extra security, all under Swoop's accepted alias of one Robert Small. Those enduring and early survivors of the rebellion heard whispers and rumors that Robert Small was some kind of vicious American officer, possibly even a general, and that Small was not his real name. But no one really cared in those dark hours, as he was revered as another fearless lifesaver with guns protecting them from the Boxers. As peace developed, the negative rumors slowly disappeared, and he just became good old Robert Small to everyone. Even the Marines stationed there called him Robert Small and told tales of his rebellion-squashing heroics. Dr. Belmont and his Chinese wife and their young son required little security this third year of medical residency, as Belmont welcomed and treated the area Chinese with their ailments. He'd become rather beloved in the community. While the legations paid Belmont for medical services, the locals could trade eggs, chickens, and bread, silks, whatever, in exchange for his treatments. Some he treated for free. As a result, Swoop had less and less concern for Belmont's safety as the years ticked by. His days escorting the Belmont family, his extra job of trolling the embassy grounds, almost with policeman-like status, quickly became uneventful, if even boring, the typical curse of so many security jobs. But this monotonous languor was better than being a hunted man. Always on the run back in the United States, he had Major Johann Gunther and a hefty salary from Belmont's rich California father to thank for these calm times and this easy job. So Swoop studied the books in the British Legation Library and attended kung fu classes 4 days a week out in the city, learning Chinese hand, sword, and knife fighting. One positive thing about being an embassy security was he was a legal man of arms in China. Pistols, knives, and rifles. In the leather bag he carried was his 2-gun pistol belt with 2 Colt .38 double-action revolvers. The bullet belt loops were full, and he had a box of rounds in the bag's side pocket. The gun belt also held a ubiquitous, large, double-edged fighting knife with an ornate handle and an artistic sheath, one he confiscated from a dead boxer he killed, like so many, with his bare hands. Back in his quarters at Belmont's residence were many other weapons. Could he ever return to those rooms again? He'd been visiting a Chinese woman named Ye Tang for some time. Her polished quiet matched her solemn wisdom. He was, he felt, falling in love with her, a dare he could heretofore never dream of as a fugitive. Would he ever see her again? Who could have found him in China? But now some hunters have, and now they captured his friends as bait. Dr. Belmont's office was just outside the official multi-embassy grounds on Legation Street, a site of horrible battles just 3 years earlier. It was once again full of shops, houses, and normal China life. The neighborhood boy warned him of 2 men, but Swoop knew there would be at least 3. The third or even more men across the street or staked out in the area, perhaps in or atop the 2-story stone buildings of the avenue. That's where he would hide and spy, if in their boots. These others would be a lookout or just a sniper for a quick kill, as Swoop was wanted dead or alive. These hunters just had to be ex-military to track him here, probably from that ditch digger bounty business, and they would plan for his reputation of pure violence from these diggers he'd escaped from and those killed of their kind since 1892. Swoop did not run straight to Belmont's office. Instead, there was a section of various stores a few blocks away, and he was bound for the largest department store in the neighborhood. Once inside the store, Swoop purchased the ubiquitous large conical oriental straw hat, and in the female department, he purchased a long black-haired wig. Once on the outside steps of the store, he put the wig over his reddish-brown hair and shoved the big hat atop his head. The lengthy black hair wig covered his shoulders. With this disguise, along with the customary Chinese outfit he already wore, he hoped to sneak close to Belmont's office unnoticed. He hoped the Americans would expect him to look like his wanted posters, dress like a Westerner, and appear to be his old Scottish Yankee cowboy self. He walked to an alley next to the store, and once a few steps inside the passageway, pulled his two-gun belt from his bag and buckled it on under the long, loose, colorful silk jacket. From there, he quickly arrived onto Legation Street and peeked around and up. Upwards because, sure enough, he immediately spotted the upper half of a man atop the building right across the street from Belmont's office. The man wore a dark Stetson-like hat. Swoop shuffled across the street and down the side of the building. He knew the three-story edifice was a cramped series of decrepit apartments. He'd reconned the building once before to evaluate the safety of the Belmont office location. The rooftop was a natural surveillance and attack point. Swoop crossed the street and shuffled inside the building through a back door. He climbed the filthy steps to the rooftop and dropped his leather bag just inside the rooftop door. He took off his jacket and draped it on his shoulders like a cape, his arms free and hidden inside. He pulled one of his pistols and held it bootlegged, as in pointed down beside his thigh, yet still concealed under the long coat. Hat and head down, he pushed the worn wooden door open and entered the roof. "Hello, how are you?" he said in Chinese to a tall man in Western clothes about 12 feet away who peered over a wall at the street below. The man turned and looked at him. The man was indeed an Anglo. "You scared? Get, Chinaman," the man growled, waving his hand as a signal for him to leave. "Oh?" Swoop said. "I said go. This ain't none of your business, Chinaman." "I think it is," Swoop said in slow, perfect English, raising his head all the way up, his face now in full view under that big hat. Eyes wide, the surprised man recognized Swoop, and he began that telltale leg crouch at the knees, the beginnings of a gun draw. Swoop lifted his pistol and shot him in the stomach area. He shot low, hoping the man would not fall over the wall to the street below, but rather double over forward. The man didn't fall over the wall. He had no time to. As the man doubled over forward just a few inches, Swoop was in a mad charge, holstering the handgun and pulling his China knife. Swoop was on him in a second. His left hand swept off the Anglo's hat and grabbed the man's long head hair. Swoop yanked the head up, back, and to the left. With that China knife in his right hand, he plunged the blade into the man's exposed neck and pulled it inward and on through the windpipe. The Westerner was down and dead in seconds, in a quick, blood-squirting mess. "Ditch digger," Swoop said, looking him over. "Yes, a white man in his 40s, scarred face, decent clothes, nice gun rig, worn boots. He had to be one of the ditch diggers' company of ex-military bounty hunters." "I'll be back for you shortly, Sidewinder," Swoop muttered. He took off his conical hat, grabbed the dead man's hat, and made for the corner of the roof. On his knees, he peeked at the Belmont office in the street below. No one below seemed to care about the single rooftop gunshot. There were always occasional gunshots from training sessions at the legations just up the avenue. No one had burst out of the Belmont office looking skyward. "What's going on in there?" he wondered, staring at the office. Were they beating Belmont? Raping his wife? What? And he couldn't wait. He simply had to swoop in. Swooping. Well, that was how he got his old army nickname, by swooping in. He left the roof with his big conical hat back on and the long coat still draped over his shoulders. He grabbed his bag by the door and dashed down the steps, out back, up the alleyway, and out to the avenue. All the while, he ran memories of the medical office layout in his mind. The front door had a bell on it, then the big lobby, then the door to the big medical office itself. There was a bathroom off the lobby, a luxury for this part of town. Where would the ditch diggers sit, wait, hide, ambush? No entry to the office would be safe. He decided against any such suicidal entry. He decided to go with the mythology of the classic street showdown, made famous in the Blood and Thunder books by Eastern writers. Once on the cobblestone street, Swoop set his bag down on the sidewalk, tore off his hat and wig. He pulled both pistols and kept them bootlegged, concealed under his long robe-like jacket. He walked into the middle of the street, right up in front of Belmont's office. "Ditch diggers," Swoop yelled out. "Ditch diggers." The nearby people on the street were a bit shocked at this audacious display. "Everybody get back! Leave!" Swoop yelled in Chinese and in English. They did, confused, and hustled off in all directions. The front door opened. The bell. An American stepped out holding the Chinese Mrs. Belmont in front of him. He had a pistol to her head. A second American stepped out alone. The three, 2 gunmen and the trembling hostage, remained on the sidewalk in front of the office. "Pat weeps," Swoop said, recognizing the solo man. "The Renegade General, Swellen in the flesh," the solo man said. "Looks like you turned all Chinese." Swoop stood still and silent. "If you don't want this little lady's head blowed off, if you got any guns under that jacket, you best drop them to the stones. You are surrounded." Swoop stood still and silent. "General, there's a man on the roof behind you with guns." "Not anymore," Swoop said. "He's dead." Swoop could see the ever-so-slight setback in their faces. He could see their eyes dart up to the roof and back. "Willard!" Pat Weeps cried out. No answer. "Well, we could just shoot you right now," Weeps added. "Bounty is the same." "You really think you could survive that? Because I'll kill you both, and we'll all die." "And this little lady here?" "We'll die too. We'll all die here today. If I'm going to die anyway, we all die." "Well, this ain't no standoff, Swellen. It's 2 against 1, and..." Swoop raised his right hand at the elbow from under the jacket and through the silk shot Weeps 3 times. Face, chest, hips. Weeps folded and fell against, then crashed into the Belmont front glass window, breaking half of it. And there, in the ragged hole, Weeps hung, framed and quivering. The hostage holder took the gun away from Mrs. Belmont's head to aim at Swoop, and with this grip on her distracted, she screamed and dove flat to the sidewalk. Swoop took off to his right, both pistols angled at the man, blazing away. Hip high at first, then he lifted the .38s up to eye level. That hunter, too, absorbed bullets up and down his chest and hips, and he fell back against the stone wall off his front. Swoop marched up to the office, eyeing both men, his right gun on the right side man, Pat Weeps, suspended in the window, and with his left gun on the left side man. Dr. Belmont burst from the front office, collapsed on his downed wife, gasping. He turned her over. She was unharmed. He looked up at Swoop, speechless, shocked, confused. "Nice move, Mei Zing," Swoop said to Mrs. Belmont. Her name meant beautiful pearl in Chinese, and she still was, even down on the sidewalk and exhausted. "Are you two all right? Did they hurt you?" "No," the doctor said. They just made us sit under their guns, waiting for you. What's going on, Robert?" "Were there only 3? "Only 3. Swoop holstered his guns. He walked to Weeps, dead, still suspended in the broken glass window. He grabbed his booted feet and hauled him out of the window. Weeps' carcass, especially his lifeless head, bounced hard on the stone sidewalk. Swoop leaned in and looked Weeps over. He'd escaped Weeps and his men for years and years, killing many of them. "How did you find me here?" Swoop said to the carcass. Now, finally, Weeps was dead, but his boss, the bounty hunter company owner and leader, head ditch digger, one Jerry Pickworth, was still alive and well back in an office in the USA, and he would still be ravenous for the bounty, still vindictive for all the damage Swoop had wrought upon them through the years. "I will explain everything," Swoop said, "but for now, Doc, will you get on the phone to the American Embassy and tell them I need a horse and 2 lengths of rope from the stables?" Dr. Belmont helped his wife up, and in a clutch of arms they stepped inside. Swoop searched both men, removing their gun belts, wallets, and travel papers. He jogged across the street, dashed upstairs, and out onto the roof. The rooftop sniper's body was there where he left it. With grunts and cusses, Swoop got the big man over to the wall. He lifted the body limb by limb to torso over the wall's top. He peeked over the edge to see if it was clear below, and with a huff, shoved the corpse over. The deceased hit the sidewalk below head first. Not that it mattered. He jogged downstairs to the street and waited. "The stable boy will be right here. I had to tell him what happened," Belmont shouted from the office doorway. Swoop nodded. A German soldier ran up from the legation's front gate. "What happened, Robert?" "Oh, these 3 men are from America. They were trying to kill me. It's an old American vendetta, rache, revenge." "Are you okay?" "I'm okay." "The doctor?" "Okay, they're okay," Swoop said. Within 5 minutes, a teenager atop a horse rounded the legation gates and galloped toward them. The other German guards, unable to abandon their posts, gathered at the entrance, watching eagerly. The boy was followed by a number of Americans from the embassy, to include some U.S. Marine officers and Ambassador Devin Larms. The boy jumped off the horse and handed Swoop the ropes. "Thanks, Jeffrey," Swoop said, and set about tying the torsos of the 2 men by the office. The German soldier helped. "Robert, what happened?" Ambassador Larms asked. "These 3 men tried to kill me, sir. It's an old blood vendetta from the U.S. of A." Larms looked at the Belmonts and they both nodded. Dr. Belmont quickly explained what happened to them while Swoop tied up the chest of the sniper across the street. He and the German tied up the 2 on the sidewalk to 1 rope, with the sniper tied up on the 2nd rope. "Jeffrey," Swoop said to the stable boy while hooking the ropes to the saddle horn, "what horse is this?" "Samson." "Can you ride Samson and tow these dead fellers down to the Belgium funeral home inside? Is the saddle on good and tight, son?" "It is, sir." "Good." Jeffrey leaped aboard Samson, testing the horse's saddle and pull, and Samson was able to drag the carcasses in a slow walk up Legation Street through the main gate toward the Belgium section. "Ambassador, I wanted to clean up the street as quickly as possible. I will be in your office to explain the details in just a few minutes. Sir, but first I want to speak with the Belmonts and make sure they're really okay." "Okay, Robert, sure. We'll see you there. It's a relief to see you safe, my friend," Larm said. He and the others returned to the legations. Swoop picked up his hat, wig, and leather bag from the sidewalk. He motioned for the Belmonts to walk inside their office with him. The lobby was a mess. All the daily cleaning and settings work of Mei Zing was in a disarray. Tables knocked over, plants smashed, her family heirloom china broken. They sat in leather chairs in the lobby, and Swoop, Robert Swellen, began. "I've got to go home, Doc. You are safe here in the legations now. The Boxer War is well over. People who want to kill me now know where I am, and they'll never stop coming for me. You and your wife and child will never be safe because of me. I must leave you. I will go back to the States. I will announce my arrival and draw attention away from you all and China. There are things you don't know about me, Doc." The couple sat raptured by his words. "You, remember during the Boxer Rebellion, you learned that my real name is not Robert Small? And you were in the army." "Yes, sir, but I don't remember." "And you never asked. I was in the army, my friends. I was. My real name is Mordecai Swellen, and I was once a lieutenant general. They nicknamed me Swoop. Swoop Swellen because they said I would swoop in and kill, massacre everybody, Indians, everybody." Which was true. If I had to, and if I was so ordered, I would. I was deserving of that bad reputation and nickname. But folks then and there didn't know I was about 1/4 Ojibwe Indian, or what many call at home the Chippewa. It was a secret I kept from the army. My first wife, he looked at Mei Zing, was an Indian, a Chippewa. "Where is she, Robert?" "She's dead, May. Murdered." "Oh, I'm so sorry." The Chippewa defeated the Sioux and the Iroquois in vicious battles through the ages, and they too swooped in on each other many times, many battles. When I had a command in the army, ordered to attack, when it was time to attack, I swooped in too, like the Indians in my ancestry. Swoop sat back in the chair, sighed, and continued. The English dictionary defines swoop as to move downward quickly and dramatically, like an eagle that swoops down to catch its prey. He explained, mostly for Mei Zing, while looking at her. And there came a point, a situation, where I could no longer remain a general, and I left. I am now a deserter, a traitor. I'm hunted, AWOL, absent without leave, a bounty on my head. "Who are these ditch diggers?" Belmont asked. Most of the men that hunt me are ex-Army. They were once called ditch diggers because they were all Army criminals and condemned to dig ditches for dead soldiers and ditches to burn and bury Indians, ditches for construction jobs. They are ex-Army vets. I have a very high bounty, and they and other bounty hunters will never stop hunting me. What will you tell the ambassador? Nothing, Doc. I'm gonna leave. Leave right now. Leave? Right now? Leave right now. Larms may feel obligated to arrest me. There are U.S. Army personnel here, and they might arrest me.
Where will you go?
Los Angeles, San Francisco. I will get aboard a ship. Somehow, I have travel papers of the men outside and their money. I will announce to the ditch diggers when back that I am no longer in China. I'll mail them proof of some kind, and you'll be safe here.
Well, what about Ya Tang?
Mei Zing asked. I must go. You must tell her goodbye for me, Swoop said.
She will have a broken heart.
Well, my heart is broken too.
Can you find the Major? Find Johann Gunther?
No, because he too will be in trouble for covering for me and also in danger because of me.
Well, my father, you could go see him and...
Belmont started. You know your father hates me for helping you stay here in China. He only pays me because he has to, because Major Gunther shamed him into paying me to stay here. Mei Zing stood up and walked into the office. She walked back with a small black silk zipper bag. She handed it to Swoop.
Here is $300, Robert.
Swoop stuttered.
Oh, we love you, Robert. You've become an uncle to us and a grandfather to our son. You cannot stay then. You must go. Come on,
Belmont said before Swoop could speak again. He followed them to the back door, with Swoop scooping up his leather bag. Once out back, Robert led them to their private stables.
You take Shelton. Saddle him up and take Shelton. Get out of here, Robert said. Now.
The three started saddling the horse up.
I'll stable Shelton at the train station, Swoop said. I'll have the station stable call you. You can just go get him in a day or two, and I'll tell him to wait for you. In a few hours, we'll tell the ambassador that you feared for your life and our lives from these killers and just had to leave right away. But we won't tell him of your past, Belmont said. What about your clothes?
Mei Zing asked. May, I've had to flee many, many times since 1891. Many places, many people. People I've become very attached to sometimes, like you two. Like Ya Tang, he said as he climbed into the saddle. But this is my life, my curse. Goodbye, Robert, Belmont said. Swoop trotted out of the yard. He stopped, took a long look at them, waved goodbye, turned and left.
He has been my friend, my shadow, for 3 years, Belmont said, holding Mei Zing, as both watched him leave.
In 2 days, Swoop stabled Shelton at the Peking train station and had the workers call Dr. Belmont. He bought a ticket for the next train for Hong Kong, a long trip with many stops. From there, he would buy passage and board the Dollar Steamship line for San Francisco. He had the money from the Belmonts and the identification papers, the 3 bounty hunters, along with their money, also in his satchel. He also had a salary collected from Belmont's father, growing in a San Francisco bank under the name Robert Small. His further plans to clear the Belmonts of future problems? Back in the States, he would use the dead man's information to spread the word of his return to the United States to the ditch diggers and their ramrod, Jerry Pickworth. Wearing his black wig under his smaller yet oriental hat, he sat in a train car. The train slowly left the station. Swoop stared out the window and studied the oriental scenery that would soon become just another memory, another war, another peace, another place, another run for his life. Did he really think, finally, he might live out his days in some sort of peace in China? He'd been leaving places, running, escaping, killing, for some 12 years. On the train ride to the ocean port of Hong Kong, his mind wandered back in time to the U.S. and his old fort, to the winter of 1890 and how this curse, this tragedy all began. Swoop's first reckoning. Chapter 2, Pour the Rye. November 1890, Fort Shannon Headquarters, South Dakota.
We cannot have any of this ghost dance horse manure, General Shanklin said, and pounded his fist on the conference table. Shanklin's aide stepped in from behind him, refilled his thick, monogrammed glass with rye whiskey. Then he jumped back and well out of the way. This Paiute Wovoka, Shanklin said, and his ghost dance religion scared hell into all the settlers and all the people reading the newspapers coast to coast. Do you know? Have you heard that he claims Jesus Christ appeared to him out here on the prairie? I do. I know him, said Lieutenant General Mordecai Swoop Swellen, the commander of Fort Shannon, and he rubbed his jaw with his left hand. He sat across from General Shanklin. Well, he preaches that Christ taught him the ghost dance, and we whites would all be swallowed up in earthquakes and floods. Well, we just disarmed them all, that's what. Swoop's eyes wandered the table. 6 men sat there in the front rooms of his rough-hewn headquarters building. The observant Shanklin aide had placed 6 glasses upside down in front of each attendee, as was customary of any General Shanklin official meeting. All but Swoop had righted their glasses up in an invitation to pour the rye. To Shanklin's left sat Regional Indian Agent Adrian Glance of the Standing Rock Agency, who looked none too happy with this new Shanklin edict of disarmament, though he followed company tradition with his upright glass and occasional sips. To Swoop's right sat his own Major Chevalier Cher, a French-American and trusted friend. Over to Shanklin's right sat Shanklin's main and notorious henchman, a Major Frederick Bare Eyes 20. 20 was every bit as ruthless as Swoop's reputation for killing was, yet not as well known for his routine deviousness. The Cherokee named 20 Bare Eyes years ago because he had no eyelashes or eyebrows to match his youthful baldness. Down at the far ends of the table were Swoop's secretary and Shanklin's secretary, both sergeants, both taking fast notes with feather pens, targeting their ink bottles without looking. Well, you realize, sir, Swoop began, that if we disarm the Lakota, there will be trouble. They hunt and shoot and regard themselves as warriors. Taking away their firearms will be... The ghost dance, Swellen, Shanklin yelled. It's an omen of trouble. It tells us all we need to know. What they dream of. They mean to fight, and kill the white man. Us. They fight the expansion west. You know this, Swoop. How many Indian wars have you been in? Wars, raids, hunts. Too many to remember, sir. I can't remember them all. Too many. You damn well will be in yet another one and right under your goddamn nose. I will not make them sign a disarmament agreement, Swoop said. Well, General Shanklin looked astonished, and he said, Swoop, this comes straight from the Department of the Army, from Washington, D.C., the White House. This is the wrong thing to do, Swoop said. It will create a great problem. People will eventually die. They will refuse. A fight will start. They'll die and we'll die. But doesn't Washington... You do it. I won't. Oh, you won't? This is not like you. Well, listen up. You will, or I will court-martial you for treason. I will have you shot as a traitor. I will see to it myself. And your replacement, Swellen, your replacement will step in and sign and reinforce the disarmament anyway, right over your executed cold body. This is going to happen with or without you. Now smarten up, boy. You enforce that treaty, and within 1 year, maybe months even, sir, maybe weeks, you will be killing all the Lakota here, Swoop said. Well, now, isn't that what you do best, General Swoop Swellen? Swoop in and kill men, women, and child? Swoop didn't answer that. He turned his glass upright, and the aide jogged in a circle around the big table, lunged in, and filled it a few inches. Swoop took a swig. I say we let them see if those ghost shirts really do repel bullets, Major 20 said. And we'll lose men, too, Swoop added. You know that General Colby of the Nebraska National Guard agrees with me about all this. The National Guard. Ha! I've got to get back to Minnesota, Shanklin said. This was a hint for them to finish all their glasses of rye. Agent Glance has copies of the agreement. This fort and others will be enforcing the agreement forthwith. Another treaty, Swoop said. An agreement treaty, and your fort will enforce it too. The 7th Cavalry will be all over this. They all drained their glasses. The aide collected them as Shanklin and his team stood, followed by Swoop and his men. The wooden chairs screeched against the oak floor. The visitors gathered their belongings, put on their heavy blue coats, and opened the door to the brisk Dakota winter winds. The front porch was shoveled, but thin waves of loose, icy snow still blew in and around. The general's men waited for him to exit first. But at the doorway, the general turned and pointed a finger at Swoop with a menacing expression. Swoop, you know what a direct order is, and this is a direct order. You'll do this. If you ask for a transfer, I won't accept it. If you want a demotion, I won't accept it. This is a do-or-die deal for all of us from Washington itself. For you. Let's get this deal done. You will ride in support of Major General Miles on this. Disarm all of them. Then the three left, so fast that no salutes were traded, and they ignored shutting the door, allowing the cold to further fill the room. Swoop, Agent Glance, and Shore sat back down. The unit secretary shut the door and chunked another 2 logs in the fireplace. In the dead of winter, an open front door, if even for a few seconds, turned the front rooms into a quick ice box. Then the secretary left for another office with his papers. Glance pulled the official decree from a satchel and laid it on the table. Woo-wee, Glance sighed. That was a whole lot worse than finding a hair in your biscuit. Swoop nodded. Okay, here what they gave me. I'm not going to do this, Swoop said, shaking his head and refusing to pick up the papers that Agent Glance dropped nearby. I know you will face a firing squad, Major Shore said. Remember what he did with that lieutenant, that kid from Florida? He had him shot and buried in a ditch within 48 hours of threatening him with treason. And it was a kangaroo court-martial. The kid was doomed, and he is saying all the same things with his threats to you again. And the next commander will make it happen, Agent Glance added. Probably that Bare Eyes 20, if you don't and won't. You can't stop this from happening, General. Probably, Swoop said. But I don't have to do it. I will not be part of this stupid, stubborn process. I can't stop it, but I'm not going to do it. Okay, can you resign? Agent Glance asked. Quit? I can't quit, Adrian. When I requested a slot at the War College, I had to sign on to a 5-more-year commitment. Then I went. I still have 2 more years to do, Swoop said. At that time, I thought nothing of it. I figured I was a lifer anyway. Well, come on, you can't quit. What will you do, sir? Major Shore asked. I don't know, Chev, Swoop said. I may sleep on what I will do next if I can sleep at all. I surely don't like the smell of the ghost dance. I don't want that ghost dance movement to expand. No, I don't. I just don't think it's the time to light a match to this stick of dynamite right now. The tribe is contained. There's a peace. There hasn't been an outbreak or a war. No citizen in Nebraska or Dakota has been killed, molested, or even shown a scratch. And no property has been destroyed off the reservation. We have workable connections with them. And if we do this, they won't listen to us anymore. And we'll wind up killing all of them. And I just know it. I've seen it all before. I've done it all before. What in hell's bells will I tell the Lakota? Agent Glance asked. The bad news, Adrian. All the bad medicine, with or without me, is a-coming. Chapter 3. A frozen, muddy road. Lieutenant General Mordecai Swoop Swellen swept his stocking feet off the bed and onto a bearskin rug. He'd slept about 7 hours, despite his mental dilemma. The front rooms, the offices just outside of his backroom quarters, were empty, as it was an hour before the routine cadre would start coming in and out. Swoop decided he would not start a fire, as was his routine each morning. He had other plans in mind. He wandered into the office and looked out a window to see the east side of Fort Shannon. Shannon was built along the Wounded Knee Creek territory in 1867. It housed 426 soldiers and a musical band. The officers' quarters provided housing for 22 families in duplexes built of adobe, rocks, and wood. There was an infirmary with one doctor and a nurse. Fort Shannon was noted for an exciting cultural life. Plays and musical events or theatricals were performed by the men, wives, and children in a large, dirt-floored building with benches for audience seating. Weekdays, this room was a schoolhouse for dependents and a pretty decent commissary in one corner. Fort Shannon was 39 miles from Sioux Falls. He'd never been stationed, least of all put in charge, of so many troops and their families, and he observed so much of normal life, the lifestyles he was foreign to. But now he was bestowed with so much more responsibility. There were some 2,100 officers and 26,000 enlisted men in the Army declared in its April 1888 consensus. The last official head count to date, almost 900 officers and 13,000 enlisted men were in the infantry, and another 400 officers and 6,000 enlisted were assigned to the cavalry. The majority of the artillery branch consisted of some 300 officers. 4,500 enlisted men were stationed at long-established fortifications along the nation's coastlines. Due to its mobility, the cavalry was the Army's primary force for controlling and combating the Indians. And in the 1880s, cavalry troops garrisoned 55 posts throughout Indian country. Swoop had risen to this high rank, as a lieutenant general strictly from battlefield combat promotions, one of the youngest men at 44 years of age to do so. He'd specialized in doing the dirty deeds and the nasty assignments from the high command. A lieutenant general such as Swellen is ranked below a general like Shanklin, and while all his promotions were field promotions, recently attending the War College helped. It was the third Wednesday of the month, and the supply wagon train would leave for Sioux Falls in 40 minutes. 6 wagons with a Company B escort. Swoop got up, dressed, but ignored the brushed uniform hung by an aide on the wall. Instead, he put on dungaree pants and brown boots and a black flannel shirt. He wrapped a civilian 2-gun belt around his waist, which held 2 dark-finish, double-action 1877 Colt 41 caliber Thunderers, his private guns, not the Army's. On serious missions, he would stow his Army pistol and flap holster rig and wear this civilian 2-gun rig instead. He was taught at a young age, when a private by an old pony soldier, war vet sergeant, that the bestest, fastest reload is pulling your second gun. In the heat of battle, no one complained, even anal retentive superior officers, about this violation of uniform policy, as Swoop was known to be double-dog ruthless with that brace of pistols. These guns and a non-regulation bowie knife and a customized sheath were his call to arms. He did wear a cavalry sword of a commanding officer sometimes, but that weapon he would be glad to leave behind. But what of his stick, his swagger stick? It laid on a dresser top. Many officers swaggered with their swagger sticks as far back as the Roman army, and Swoop grew accustomed to it. It was a graduation gift from the War College, made of oak, stained and inscribed, with a formed, textured handle. Military swagger sticks came in all sizes and thicknesses through time, and this tailor-made one was thicker than most. The maker, a colonel in the War College, was Irish and held night classes for fighting with these swagger sticks, and also the infamous Irish cane, the shillelagh, a knotty walking stick that was also used for fighting. The stick was too long to be a kosh or a short club, and too short to be a cane. It was about 2 feet long. The colonel even made short snap holsters for these swagger sticks for belt carry. He opened and packed a leather bag with some other personal items and stuffed the swagger stick inside. It just fit. Unlocked in a drawer from the Spartan dresser in the room, he pulled a thick, large envelope stuffed with money, his life savings, and since he hardly ever purchased anything and spent his entire teenage and adult life in the Army, it was of a considerable bounty. It too went in the bag. He slipped into a mid-hip length brown leather jacket with a sheepskin lining and collar, tucked an old brown hat on his head, grabbed the bag, and walked out the back door of the building under the cold, gray, cloudy sky. He saw the supply wagon train amassing. "Sergeant Gates, I will be accompanying you to Sioux Falls this morning," Swoop told the NCO atop his horse and in front of the first wagon. The sergeant eyed up Swoop's civilian clothes. Yes, sir. You want your horse, sir? No, sir, I don't. I will ride in one of the wagons. I have some personal business to attend to there, and am dressing down this morning. Yes, sir. Swoop wandered down the lines of wagons, past the snorting horses and curious drivers. He climbed onto the fourth wagon, tossed his bag in the back, and sat next to a nervous teenage private. Good morning, sir, the surprised young driver said. Good morning, Private. And your name is? Henderson, sir. First name? Larry, sir. Private Larry Henderson. How are you this morning? I'm okay. How are you, sir? Well, you didn't much expect to have a post commander ride shotgun with you, did you, huh? No, sir. Sergeant Gates called the men to order, and the wagon crunched across the hard, frozen snow across Fort Shannon, out the freshly opened gates and out onto the cold, frozen, muddy trail to the big city. Major Chevalier Cher appeared on the front porch of the officers' quarters, pulling his jacket on while juggling a metal cup of steaming coffee. He stopped cold when he saw Swoop, dressed in civvies, on a wagon, leaving the base. That crazy bastard. He is going AWOL, Cher mumbled in astonishment. Swoop glanced Cher's way, and still from a distance, Cher could see Swoop half smile at him and then raise two fingers about an inch high from his right thigh as if to wave a very subtle goodbye. Cher nodded back at him. Shanklin will hunt him down and kill him, Cher whispered aloud.
I hope that you will get this ebook, paperback, or audiobook on Audible, as well as the Gunther Western Adventure series and other books that I've written.